All right, so it's day three. I think the biggest problem I'm facing is I'm 30 and I don't have a plan. Like, I genuinely don't have a plan. And I don't know if you have a plan as to kind of strategically how you want to place yourself in the world and what you want to do with your time and how you're going to effectively use your time here. But I imagine it's an extremely powerful thing to have an idea as to what you're intending to do and to kind of gear yourself into functionally working towards that experience every day. Like, the plan is just, I suspect, an idea, an ideology as to how I place myself into the world with the resources available to me and how I strategize in how I use my time and my ability, I suspect, to approach the world most strategically. That's a plan. You write things down, you have a concept of an end goal, a destination, and within that destination, you find the necessary steps to take. Each journey starts with a single step, and the journey continues with every preceding step. But the issue I found, and I'm sure that you will find as well, is we lose track not only of the end goal, but of the step that we're on and the steps that we're trying to take. Like, what is the next step? What is the next step? So I've started recording videos and I'm going to try and do one every day. But like, there's already an element of panic within me of like, what am I going to film? What am I going to talk about? And I'm thinking too far ahead because I'm not focused on the next step. And I'm not aware of what the end goal is. Like, what's the end goal of making these videos? And I imagine if somebody, maybe you, are starting the same thing, I can't imagine that you would be in a different experience unless you're 3 steps ahead of me or 2 steps ahead. You've got your plan and you know what the next step is. But at the minute, I'm just filming myself and talking at a camera, and I suppose trying to develop skills. I already feel comfortable talking to a camera. I think it's not it doesn't seem to be a huge problem for me, and like, I can talk, but I'm struggling to find purpose in what I'm saying, and so I almost don't. For me personally, I'm not valuing what I'm saying, and I'm not really listening to it. I'm just talking, and I think I've spent the last 20 years, I'd say, just talking, and I can do it. I can kind of blag talking because I have an ability to talk, but it's useless just talking. It's meant to have a destination. Like, what am I trying to say? How am I trying to use language to develop myself, to progress, and to actually achieve something of some level of notoriety? Something that provides value, rather than, I'm 30, and on a very real level, I don't feel like I've contributed towards humanity. I don't feel like I've contributed towards humanity at all. At all. I don't think, I'm not particularly conscious of improving anything. And I suspect that's probably why my internal dialogue has been so self-limiting, so unloving, and so filled with covert hatred towards my body. My mind sees my body as an enemy. And if you're doing this, then the same as me, tensing up in moments, restricting things, cutting off vital processes, which are basically just your body requesting things that it needs: air, water, sleep. And so I suppose, like, everything that I'm doing, and I don't know if this is going to be the same for you, but everything I'm doing is uncoordinated. and therefore lacks purpose. And I've got it written down on my wall, I believe. It's like, in the absence of purpose, you become the sole purpose. And in here lies a huge problem, because if you're the sole purpose, then you end up gripping onto yourself for support, because you think you are an individual suspended in space, alone, when in reality we're connected to everything, literally everything. The Sahara feeds the Amazon rainforest. Sediment from the Sahara gets blown up, washed across an ocean effectively, in the sky, carried across the ocean, and then gets planted on the Amazon rainforest. And I just think, that's the best example I have of how everything is connected. The desert feeds the forest, which are, in terms of land, the absolute opposite. So it's kind of like, within ourselves, the light feeds the dark, and the dark feeds the light. And it's about finding harmony and unity within these things, within ourselves, to not be destructive. The sun will burn you up, but it also sterilize things and stimulate growth if it's in balance. And so I suspect if I really am going to do this whole video thing and record a video every day and look at the camera and talk to somebody, my past self, maybe somebody who's out there who's as lost as I am now, and become the person who has experienced that loss, that sense of purposelessness and meaninglessness in their suffering and in their hardship, and in experiencing things that they weren't prepared for and didn't have people around them who were preparing them for. They were doing the opposite. They were subjecting them to them. They were forcing them to experience the same things they'd experienced in some generational abuse, just anger handed down, frustration, confusion, inability to respond effectively to environmental stimulus. And I suppose for me anyway, and I imagine it's going to be the same for people watching this, for you and for anybody else, we're all kind of on a similar path about, trying to find connection and trying to find a purpose. And within that, you find a deeper connection with people. It's like we're not actually that different. There are differences, definitely, and some differences we must be aware of and be cautious of. But at the end of the day, most people that I come into contact with in the United Kingdom are kind. Most. They just don't want to be disrespected. And I suppose they want to be validated, I suppose is what I mean. Disrespected is the negative, but they want the positive. They just want to be validated. They exist. They are people. And maybe recording this is, in a sense, building my need. And if you start the same thing, then your need of building a relationship with something that provides validation. I was alive. I lived. I did my best. I worked hard towards a goal. I found out what that goal was, even though I wasn't born with one inherently planted. I sought one out. I found one, and I believed in it enough to work towards it. And to walk that path, those steps. And I made mistakes. I walked down the wrong steps. I walked up the wrong steps, maybe. You know, I walked up steps which were too steep. I walked up steps which were too flat. But I kept looking for those incremental steps to make something of myself. You know, to find validation. That within me and within my experiences, there was truth. And if I could find that truth, then I could do something worthwhile. And I really hope that, honestly, if you're watching this, that you're further along the path than me. Especially considering how many wrong steps I think I've taken personally. But yeah, at the end of the day, the goal is the truth. And the purpose is what I'm meant to do with that. And how I can provide some sense of value within what I've experienced, and to use it most effectively. And and to do that, I've got to make mistakes, to film myself, to be accountable. And so if you have watched this video, accountability is probably the most valuable thing. Because with accountability, we can take ownership of ourselves. And once we take ownership of ourselves, we can find out our purpose. And so I think I'll leave it there.